Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to be coloring our baby dino. I'm going to be working in Adobe Photoshop, and this is my own procedure that I've developed. It allows me a lot of leeway in case I have revisions, editing, additions, the kind of things you have to deal with when you have a client. If you have any feedback, any comments, I'd love to hear from you. The first thing I do is I'm creating a transparent line overlay from the line art. I'm going to start by selecting everything on the artwork and copying. I go to my layers palette and I create a new layer. I'm going to call it line. Now I'm going to go over to the channels palette. And in the channels palette I am going to create a new alpha channel. I'm going to use the paste command to place the original drawing in that channel. Now I'm going to hit invert and invert that image. It's very important at this point. I go up and I select the original channel. Then I'm going to drag that new alpha channel down to the create new channel icon. Back in the layers palette, I turn off the background image, so I don't want to look at it, and I'm going to dispose of it once I'm sure everything is okay with the new overlay. I make sure that I'm in the new line layer, and I fill in the channel mask with black. Now I've got a transparent black line overlay, and I can delete the original art layer. At this point I hit save. I'm going to do that a lot. I've learned my lesson. Next, I'm creating another new layer, and I'm going to call it color. This layer needs to be positioned underneath the line layer. If I have not already created or converted this file to RGB color, this is the point where I must make sure that it's the color space in which I'm working. And again, I hit save. I'm going to use the color layer to drop in my solid base colors. I'm going to do this by selecting on the line layer the area or areas that I want to fill with a specific color. I'd kind of like to then expand the area slightly, maybe 2 to 3 pixels depending upon my resolution. I activate the color layer, and in this method it's very important to stay aware of what layer I'm working on. You get kind of used to it rather quickly, but it is important to be aware of this. I select the base color and I fill in those areas. Now this does not have to be an exact color. I'll be adjusting as I go along. I just need something to fill that color space. I inspect and I fill precisely. I add any missed areas and I subtract any runovers. And I hit save. I continue to drop in solid colors using the same procedure over the whole drawing. And I keep hitting save after each one. And you get the idea. I'm not going to mention this anymore, but I do it after every single step. Next, I need to create my background. This could be done on the same color layer, but I prefer to make it separate. It gives me a little more leeway. I create a new layer in the layers palette, and I call it background. And I bring it to the bottom of the layer stack. Then I fill it with my choice of solid color. Now I inspect the overall color scheme and tweak and adjust anything I think I should. I'll be doing this whenever it seems right from here on in. I've found it safer and easier to do all my modeling and shading on a separate layer, so now I create my shading layer. Again, I create a new layer in the layers palette. This one I call shaded color, and I place it just above the solid color layer. To shade an area, I first go to the color layer, select the base color I want to shade, and then I return to the shaded color layer. I choose an airbrush setting. My own preference is a high opacity and a low flow, and whatever brush size I judge will work best. I then sample the base color as the basis for my first shading. I work from that sample and darken, intensify or desaturate, etc., and then begin to apply shading on the shaded color level, varying the tone as I go along. I then use the same technique to create highlights all the way up to white, and then to apply complementary backlighting and other tones into the figure. I continue with each color area, being aware of carrying the continuity of the shadows, highlights, and backlighting that I'm creating through all the forms. If the shading is too dark, too light, too intense, not intense enough, I adjust it as I work. As I'm thinking about shading the ground, the terrain, for some fun and variety I decided to add some foliage-looking shapes into the foreground. I'm going to create some shapes with the polygonal lasso, and then in the color layer adjust that area to be lighter and brighter. I then return to the shading layer and add more shading to the ground and the grasses. In this manner, I continue to shade and highlight various sections on the shaded color layer. I'm also continuing to adjust the colors on the basic color layer as well as my shading until I'm happy with the overall combination. Finally, I'm going to add some tone to the background. I use the same process I've been using to create a shaded background layer and to variegate my background. I tweak, adjust, put in some finishing touches, and there's our baby dino, all colored. Should I desire to go back in to change anything, it's easy enough to do so on the various layers I've created without having to unnecessarily redo large areas of the piece. It's very important if you're working for a client to keep those options open for revisions and to keep all those layers for later on in case you have to make revisions further down the line. Thanks for following the process with me. I hope you had as much fun as I did, and I'll see you next time.